the land of bratwurst, the land of schnitzel, lederhosen, and political philosophies that belong in the dustbin of history. Anyway, Germany and Germanic people have had a profound impact on the world, and the story of European history would not be complete without a discussion concerning Germany. After years of conflict between Germanic peoples and the mighty Roman Empire, it was indeed Germanic peoples from the north of Europe that finally spelled doom for the empire. With the crossing of the Rhine by Germanic peoples of northern Europe in 406, it was inevitable that the empire would fall. Once the Roman Empire fell less than 100 years later, it was the Germanic people that set up a number of different kingdoms throughout the former empire. The most notable with the longest lasting impact would be the Frankish kingdom, centered between modern-day France and Germany. The Franks would go on to conquer almost all of modern-day France, Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, and the kingdom reached its height under Charles the Great, or Charlemagne. Because Charlemagne's kingdom controlled much of the former Western Roman Empire, he is considered by many to be the father of Europe, and he started to refer to himself as emperor. On Christmas Day in the year 800 CE, the Pope made it official by crowning Charlemagne the Holy Roman Emperor. While this move enraged the Eastern Roman Empire, the title Holy Roman Emperor and the empire itself would last another 1,000 years to the 19th century. Anyway, the empire of Charlemagne would not last long, however, because it would eventually be split up among his grandchildren. This division led to the development of the Kingdom of France in the West, while the Holy Roman Empire continued to exist in the East and would eventually evolve into the modern nation of Germany. While France would go on to develop into a powerful nation, the Holy Roman Empire would not. It was nothing more than a collection of German-speaking states that elected an honorary emperor that had no real power over his supposed vassals. So, remember how the French king was initially limited in power thanks to the noble lords having so much power? Well, the situation in the Holy Roman Empire was that situation to an extreme. Throughout this empire, there were really just a number of duchies, kingdoms, and principalities that acted as independent nations that would come together from time to time and elect an emperor that, again, had no real power other than, I guess, the power of persuasion. It is for this reason that many historians laugh when they hear people talk about the Holy Roman Empire. One, it was not truly an empire, just a collection of German-speaking kingdoms. Two, it was not Roman but German. And three, it certainly was not holy, especially later in its history. But in the end, it was still called the Holy Roman Empire, and some important Germanic kingdoms that developed within the Holy Roman Empire during the Middle Ages would be Austria, Bohemia, Bavaria, and Prussia. Austria would go on to become one of the most powerful German kingdoms and was seen as kind of the protectors of Christian Europe, especially after the fall of the Byzantine Empire. Bohemia would be incorporated into the Austrian Empire, but would later go on to become the Czech Republic. And it was under Prussian leadership that enabled Germany to finally be completely unified, which did not happen until after Bavaria joined during the Franco-Prussian War. Well, what caused the Holy Roman Empire to end? And what allowed Prussia to take control of Germany as a whole? Well, the Holy Roman Empire came to an end after the French Emperor Napoleon marched on through and broke the power of the old German states. the old, small, independent kingdoms, principalities, and duchies were no match for the sheer power of Napoleon's French Empire, and the old order just collapsed, and the French Empire set up the Confederation of the Rhine as German puppets of the French Empire. The powerful German kingdoms of Austria and Prussia, however, were not part of that French puppet confederation, and it was those two already powerful German kingdoms that joined the British and the Russians to help destroy Napoleon and the French Empire, which, of course, made those two kingdoms even more powerful. In the mid-1800s, after the end of the Napoleonic Wars, many Germans wished to do away with the old kingdoms and unify as one German nation. But the question was, which kingdom would lead the German people? Would it be Austria, the older kingdom that also controlled Bohemia, Hungary, and much of the Balkan Peninsula? Or would it be the relatively new kingdom of Prussia that had been building its power since the 1700s? Well, the Austro-Prussian War of 1866 helped decide that question. The war between Austria and her allies and Prussia and her allies resulted in an overwhelming Prussian victory and led to Prussia gaining dominance over all of Germany. And after a war with France in 1870 and 1871, all of Germany came under control of the Prussian kingdom, and the German Empire was proclaimed. Even though the new German Empire was the, first time Germany had ever been unified as one nation, many Germans still considered the old Holy Roman Empire to be the first time the country was unified. And as such, it is known of as the First Reich. This new German Empire that was just established, however, would then go on to be known as the Second Reich, or Second Empire. The German Empire quickly became one of the most powerful countries in Europe and started going around the world and building up a colonial empire in the mold of the British and French. This, in turn, caused a great amount of concern in London and Paris, where leaders were worried about Germany becoming the most powerful country in Europe. Even though the UK had allied itself with the Prussians to defeat Napoleon in the early 1800s, the British found themselves allying themselves with their old French nemesis and the Russian Empire to counter the rising German threat. The Germans, in turn, allied themselves with Austria and Italy. Eventually, Italy would, switch sides, and Germany and Austria would ally themselves with the old Ottoman Empire. Because of these two competing alliances, tensions were growing in Europe, and many were itching to go to war.
Everyone knew a big war was coming. France wanted some stuff back that Germany had taken from it, Germany wanted to take more of everyone's stuff, and they were building a big sexy navy that was making the British uncomfortable. These two empires thought they were really cool, but lots of different people who lived there didn't think it was so cool, and some of them had even been declaring independence with help from Russia. Everyone was talking about each other behind each other's backs, throwing the fact that military technology had come a long way since the last major war, and suddenly everyone was pretty eager to beat each other up. In this area of Austria-Hungary lived some Serbs and Bosnians who hated living in Austria-Hungary. So the Austro-Hungarian Archduke Franz Ferdinand goes there for a nice drive in an open-top car with his car's route published in advance. And that went just about as well as you'd expect. Some assassins were waiting for him along the way and threw bombs at his car, but they missed and blew up some officers behind him instead. So the Archduke goes into hiding, leaves Sarajevo, and the whole war never happens. Except no, the Archduke doesn't leave, but instead goes back out in the open-top car to visit the injured officers in hospital. The driver takes a wrong turn and by sheer coincidence gets stuck beside one of the failed assassins, who shoots him. Austria-Hungary is understandably pissed about all this, and they think the Serbian government had something to do with it, which they might have. So they go to their ally Germany and say, "Hey Germany, we're going to declare war on Serbia," and Germany is all for that. So Austria-Hungary send a big list of impossible demands to Serbia, and when Serbia refuses, they declare war. Austria-Hungary and Germany are friends, and Serbia is protected by Russia, who's friends with France, so they'll declare war on each other. Montenegro joins in too. France and Britain also have a kind of alliance, so when France says, "Hey Britain, you got my back?" Britain is like, "Maybe." And then they decide to stay out of it, which is great for Germany, because Germany has a plan. They know that Russia is so big and clumsy that it will take them a while to get ready for war. So with this guy in charge, Germany will send all its troops into France at lightning speed while Russia's getting ready, defeat France, then move all the troops to Russia and defeat Russia, and then we all speak German and eat Pfefferpottast every day. Just one problem. France has loads of forts and defenses along its German border, and Germany can't waste any time fighting them, so Germany decides to go around them, through Belgium. Belgium is neutral, but Germany wants to march 750,000 troops through it to get around France's defenses. They're hoping Belgium will just kind of sit down and shut up, but they don't. They fight back, and they're pretty good too, so they slow the Germans down. What's worse is that Britain shows up, and they're pretty pissed that Germany's invading neutral countries. So now Britain declares war on Germany.
I figured you would like that. Anyway, Europe became mired in a conflict that would last much, much, much longer than anyone anticipated. Because of the advancements in technology, traditional methods of warfare no longer worked, and the opposing armies had to dig trenches and hope that one side eventually gave up. In 1917, the Russian Empire collapsed, and all of a sudden, Britain and France were without a key ally. Germany could now focus all of its energy on the two Western powers. But Russia was about to be replaced by a country that was far more powerful, and one that was not worn out from the past 3 years of fighting: the United States. The German strategy was now simple. With Russia out of the way, Germany needed to defeat Britain and France before too many American troops would arrive in Europe. Unfortunately for the Germans, they were unable to accomplish this, and the Americans mobilized much, much faster than they expected. On November 11th, 1918, the war was won by the Allies. The German and Austrian empires collapsed and were replaced by unstable democracies. Also, the French and British, because of all of the suffering caused by the war, wished to exact revenge on Germany. They forced the Germans to demilitarize, admit guilt for the war, and pay a ton of money to the Allies. This made the unstable German Republic even more unstable. This instability led to an Austrian-born German nationalist and his Nazi party becoming the largest party in the German parliament. Adolf Hitler then used his newfound power to undermine German democracy, ban other parties, and create a German dictatorship that would later be known as the Third Reich, the Third Empire. The Nazi regime in Germany was one of the most disgusting, vile regimes in the history of the world. It set up a system of government that was built upon racism and discrimination. There were many people that were discriminated against by the Nazi regime, but no group suffered at the hands of the Nazis more than the Jewish people. Hitler hated the Jewish people and blamed them not only for Germany's loss in the First World War, but for controlling Europe's great powers in a way that hurt Germany. In addition to this, Hitler hated that Germany had lost land after the war and wanted to expand the German nation out to give Germans more room to live at the expense of the people that were already living there. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and Britain and France once again found themselves at war with the Germans. This time, the British and French were totally unprepared for war, and shortly after the start of the war, Germany had conquered pretty much all of Europe, with Britain and her colonies alone in the fight. Hitler wanted to wear out the UK and force them to sue for peace, but British Prime Minister Winston Churchill refused to surrender. V for victory. With the American entry into the war in 1941, and with the war turning against the Nazis in the East against the Soviet Union, it was only a matter of time before Germany would, once again, lose to the Allies. Germany would indeed lose, but only after 75 million people were dead. 75 million, including 6 million Jewish people. Because of the Holocaust, 35% of the world's Jewish population was destroyed. Because of Germany's atrocities, the entire country ended up being occupied by the Allied powers of the United States, United Kingdom, France, and the Soviet Union. Because of differences in opinion between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union, Germany was then split between the democratic West Germany and the communist East Germany, just 4 years after the war. For much of the rest of the 20th century, Germany was split between those two countries, until the fall of communism in the late 1980s. It was at this point that Germany was finally reunified under the control of the West German government. Today, Germany is one of the richest countries in Europe and is now a vital ally of the United States as a member of NATO and is seen as the leader of the European Union with France. I will now leave you with this. Einigkeit und Recht und Freiheit. Unity and justice and freedom. The motto of the Federal Republic of Germany.